Well, good morning, everybody. It's nice to see you. Some of you I know. Some of you are meeting for the first time, so in either case, a pleasure. And as you know, some of you are watching us through the web, so thank you very much for being here too. The idea today, this first 60 minutes, or even not even 60 minutes, 45 minutes, to tell you about a few things I think are really important for those who are interested in entrepreneurship. Now, it's not just entrepreneurship about creating a firm, it's entrepreneurship and innovation, but I really want to focus on a few points, a few ideas that I think are really crucial if you want to understand how this thing happened. Now, I'm a professor, I'm a teacher, I do research. I really like being here, and I really like sharing some of the ideas that we create here, some of the ideas about how entrepreneurship happens, why it doesn't happen, why it fails, and how you can make it so it doesn't fail that often. This is generally the idea I want to tell you about. And because this is, puts me in touch, my work puts me in touch with entrepreneurs, I really enjoy being in connection with them and being able to share a little bit what we learn from research and from the experience of people like you who are doing MBA or who want to do a program like the Global Entrepreneurship Program. So in any case, it gives me a lot of pleasure to be with you. I feel like I'm doing something that, it's a little bit something I'm not supposed to do. But I really want to say that it's really a good idea to be here with you. I feel like a little kitten in a pocket. So hello, everybody. Hi, this is me. And when my boss looks at me and he sees what I'm doing, sometimes he sees me like having fun. And you know what? You're not supposed to be having fun too much. You're supposed to work, and work's supposed to be hard. But like this little dog who's caught doing something he's not supposed to do, I guess this is the way I feel now. Just like sharing something, sharing stuff, doing something interesting, getting some like peanut butter, and sharing with you guys. Now, I want to share my joy today with you, to tell you that the topic I'm going to be talking about is a topic that I really like, I've been thinking about for a few years. And recently, as you know, we had the WEF, the World Entrepreneurship Forum, happened here in Lyon. Every year, 1 year in Lyon, the other year somewhere else. And during this forum, you know, there's a lot of people who come, a lot of press, and they talk to professors and they talk to participants. And of course, I mean, we, the public relations people at the school, they push professors to talk to journalists and tell them what the things we've been working on. And that means I would tell them, yes, I'll be working on this, I'll be working on that. Would that be interesting? So I was in front of a couple of journalists, and they asked me, what have you been working on? What have you been thinking about? I said, well, a lot of things. So I told them a variety of things I've been researching, I've been publishing about. But one of the things they really enjoyed was the idea that to teach entrepreneurship, you need to have a special mindset. That teaching entrepreneurship is not like teaching finance. It's not like teaching marketing. It's a different thing. And I said that I feel that many schools are not doing a great favor to entrepreneurs because they're not really teaching what they were supposed to be teaching. So that was the whole argument of my conversation, and the guys say, okay, well, very much, very polite. I said, well, that's it. That's the last time I hear from them. And, well, no, I was wrong. Like 2 days later, they contact me back. They say, you know what? I think we run this by the editor. We're really happy about the angle. Could you please write a piece? Say an article. I say, okay. So I wrote the article, like longer, of course, like more substantiated about entrepreneurship. And the guy said, oh, we like it very much. So I just wanted to share with you that on the 22nd of December, the Financial Times is going to print a piece based on essentially what I'm going to say here, which is not something I prepared for you today. It's something I've been thinking about for a few years. But the most important point is not that this is being published. The most important point is that we are focusing on how to teach and how to learn entrepreneurship. And I think this is really interesting because this is pretty much what we do here at the Emlyon. We reflect on how to learn these things, how to teach these things, and how to learn what I call evidence-based entrepreneurship. Now, evidence-based entrepreneurship it's a lot of things, but it's essentially teaching entrepreneurship with the best scientific evidence we have, not with the things we believe to be true, the things that sound good, that feel good, but in the end, they will leave you broke. Evidence-based entrepreneurship is of interest because it really forces you to think how entrepreneurship truly happens and why it doesn't happen. What are the things that block entrepreneurship in different parts of the process? Why entrepreneurship doesn't start? Why when it starts doesn't go on? When it goes on, it doesn't complete? What are the things that happen there? Now, I'll show you in a second. I'll talk to you in a second. I'll tell you why sometimes the way we approach reality, the way we try to understand things is not the right way. And of course, when we do that, we make mistakes. Now, it's it's really sad to make a mistake because we understood the situation wrong. It's much better to make a mistake because of unpredictable events. I'll get back to you in a second on that. Now, for those who do not know me, I think it's important that I tell you who I am. On the left of the screen, you see my face. That's me. My name is Pablo Martin de Holan. That's my family name. My first name is Pablo. And I am the director of MBAs here at the Emlyon. I also teach occasionally at Purdue University and at MIT, and also at Emlyon Business School in Latin America. It's a school you never heard of, but it's one of the top in Latin America, which is really good. Before that, I was for 12 years at IE Business School in Madrid, where I was the chairman of the Entrepreneurial Management Department. The school has significant growth and in both in number of students, quality, and ranking. So this is pretty much what we're trying to do here with you guys. Before that, my education was at McGill University, where I am from, and before that, at Sorbonne University. And what I'm trying to tell you today is essentially a very simple thing. I'm trying to tell you that when you look at entrepreneurs, you always think about this man. Now, I put like here Steve Jobs. It could be anybody, really. It could be Jack Ma, or it can be Mark Zuckerberg, or anyone you really, really like. You see this person, and you see this person because you admire them, him or her, mostly him, but some hers. And you admire them. You want to learn and see how they are. What are the bases for their success? How did they do it? How did they manage to be so immensely successful, to see things that no one ever saw? So let's imagine you want to do that. Let's imagine you're curious because you're doing your MBA, you want to be a good manager, and even though you don't expect to create a company like Apple, you would like to make an impact in the organization you work for. You want to make an impact. You want to make a dent. And because of that, you look at Steve Jobs. Well, unfortunately, he's dead, so there's not much he can say, but we have enough evidence, enough documents that will let you actually take a look and see what he said, how he thought, how he reacted to life and to things. Okay, let's say you do that. Let's say you buy yourself the book. There is a biography by Steve Jobs. It's not an autobiography because he didn't write it himself, but it's a biography. And the author of the biography, he had enough contacts in his network to be able to talk to people who had worked with Steve Jobs, who had lived with Steve Jobs, who had heard Steve Jobs, people who actually knew him very, very well. He actually interviewed Steve Jobs a few times before, of course, he passed away, and before the book was finished. So the book is not the book written by Steve Jobs, but it's a good book. It's a good book, gives you a lot of information about, well, the life and history of Steve Jobs, and of course of Apple and Macintosh, which is the whole saga that we have right now in our pockets, in our computers, in everywhere that we use, we have something that's Apple. But the question here is not how interesting it is to read the biography of Steve Jobs, because from a literary perspective, from a human perspective, it's fantastic to read the story. He's an unusual man. Now, it's always nice to read the stories of unusual people, people who actually make like really, really big. There is even a book, if you're into these things, if you follow Malcolm Gladwell, he has a book that's called Outliers. And he studies people who are exceptionally successful. What are the determinants for these people? Why some people are truly like 25 sigmas above everybody? How can they do it? So you read the book because you want to do that. And of course, from a literary point of view, you're going to learn a lot of things about Steve Jobs, how he was not, how he thought, how he did things, a lot of information. You're going to learn also that he was not a very good human being, apparently. I mean, I've never met him, so I don't know. But humanly, he was not the best person, let's say. He was not a super friend. He was not a super boss. He was a little bit of an egomaniac, tyrannical person. But he was an immensely successful man. But the question here, and remember why we started this conversation, is what are you going to learn from reading this 500, almost 600 pages that this book has? So you read the book, you assimilate what's inside, and you want to be better. And the question is, how much better are you going to be? That is a true question I'm asking you. Now, you don't need to answer now, but let's rewind a little bit. Let's go backwards. You want to improve your skills, and you buy Steve Jobs' book. You learn what Steve Jobs did, and now you apply what Steve Jobs taught you, what you thought you had learned from the book, you apply to your reality. This effort that you took supposedly should end up in better results. If not, why would you do it, right? If reading the book doesn't do anything, of course you can read it for pleasure, but that's a different story. How useful is it going to be to a person, a student, MBA student, or anybody for that matter, who wants to learn from the book of Steve Jobs? Well, I could do the exercise with you. I don't have a lot of time, so I'm not going to spend that much time on that. But to show you how uninteresting this proposal is, let me move it structurally from Steve Jobs to someone else. So let me do the same exercise. I'm not answering how useful it is to learn from Steve Jobs if you want to be a better manager, a better innovator. I'm not answering the question. I'm going to just change the context so let's see if we can answer how insane this question is if we move it away and we talk about another very important human being. So this is Barack Obama. Oh, it's not. I'm sorry. Got a confusion. Well, this is Brad Pitt. So let's talk about Brad Pitt instead of Steve Jobs. Like, again, immensely successful. What else? Immensely successful. I mean, what else? He's immensely successful. I mean, he's a great guy. Married to Angelina Jolie, which in the big scheme of things is not that bad. Before that, it was Jennifer Aniston. And in between, a bunch of others I don't really know of. But I mean, I'm sure they're equally qualified. So this is a successful guy. Amazing. Now, here's this young Brad Pitt. They have lower the Brad Pitt, but still just as good looking. Now, let's say that I tell you that for some of these coincidences of life, my brother works with Brad Pitt. They work together. Now, it's a long story, but my brother is a movie maker. He makes movies. Now, you don't make a lot of money when you're in movies. Very few people make money making movies. But there's a lot of occupations in which you can use your movie-making skills. For example, video games. Now, I don't know how the video games work because I don't play that many video games. But it turns out that when you get to a point in the video game, you see a movie. Right? You don't play anymore. You're watching a movie in which a princess, I don't know, flies away with the dragon and something happens, I guess. But you see the movie. Now, the video games makers have realized that if you make these movies with characters that people know, the game becomes much more popular. For example, if you do a movie with a pirate, well, you want to put Johnny Depp. If you want to do a movie with someone cute, you put Brad Pitt, and so on and so forth. Because people recognize the character and they're more likely to buy the game and assimilate what the game is and essentially bond with the game. All right. Well, that's what my brother does. So he deals with people who actually make the movies and all the stuff. Turns out that to make video games, you need a lot of video capabilities, and one of the ones you need is capturing images. Now, we don't have enough machines to make a human being from scratch. If you want to create a person from scratch from the computer, it's very, very difficult. So the technique is to put a real person, you dress the person in black, you put little dots, and then the person moves in front of a camera, the camera captures the dots, and then the computer, the only thing it has to do is put a layer, a skin, on top of the other person. That's much easier for the computer. To render that is much, much easier, so it goes much faster, and you save a lot of time and money. Anyway, that's what he does. He supervises like about 100 people who do that, and that's his job. And because one of these movies, there's Brad Pitt, so they became friends. Now, it really happens when I tell this story to students that at the end of the class, people come and say, would it be possible to pass a message to Brad Pitt? Sure, yeah, okay. So they give me a message, and because they live in Shanghai, so because Shanghai is on the other side of the world, I send a message. By the time we wake up tomorrow, I have the answer from my brother, because my brother contacted Brad replied to my brother replied to me, and I give it to you. So 3 degrees of separation between you and Brad Pitt. Awesome. Let's say then that you take the 10 dating lessons from Brad Pitt. That's what they asked me, the 10 dating lessons from Brad Pitt. Let's say that any of you, male mostly, would like to apply the 10 dating lessons from Brad Pitt. What is going to happen? It's the same idea that we had before. I'm reading the book from Steve Jobs. I'm applying the 10 lessons from Steve Jobs. This is not Steve Jobs, it's Brad Pitt, but it's the same thing. I want to apply the 10 lessons to my reality to see if I can improve it. Are they going to work? I mean, how will people move their heads? I mean, they're a little bit shy of saying what they really, really think. But if I ask you, like, the answer is probably no. In fact, it's odd because the females are moving their head and saying, no. Females say, no, it's not going to work at all. Yeah, males are a little bit unconvinced. Well, no, I should try it anyway. Yeah. No, it's probably not going to work. Now, but let's see. You want to take the pain of applying a certain set of rules because you believe that the outcome is going to be a better quality. I apply the lessons, the results are better. Now we're in a situation in which you apply the lessons and the results are not better. They're probably either the same, and that's in the best of circumstances, or they can be worse. So you work hard you apply the lessons of Brad Pitt, and you're worse off than before. Now, why are you worse off than before? Because now you look fake. Not only you're not doing it well, because these lessons apply very well to Brad Pitt, but not to you, but on top of that, you look fake because you're pretending to be something you're not. Double whammy. The story here is that context is essential for any type of learning. And the reason why you cannot learn very much from Steve Jobs or Brad Pitt is because you're not Steve Jobs or Brad Pitt, and you're not there at the right time. Steve Jobs was a person that emerged at a certain point in time, and he was successful not only because he was the way he was, but also because he was at the right time at the right moment. That he didn't control very much, but he took advantage of what he saw. Now, imagine Steve Jobs being born 25 years before. Would have he been that successful? Probably not. He would not, but probably not. Steve Jobs being born 25 years later, and it would have been the same story. Mark Zuckerberg being born 10 years before or 10 years after. Now, that doesn't take any merit away from these guys. I'm not criticizing them at all. I'm just saying that sometimes when we need to understand entrepreneurship and successful entrepreneurship, or success in general, we need to understand not just the causes of that success, but also the context in which these things are true and the context in which these things are not true. And sometimes we make a mistake, especially in entrepreneurship. Because entrepreneurship, well, is everywhere, but it fails most of the time. And we need to understand why and how we can do to learn from those failures to actually learn and improve my own, probably my own firm, my own project. And this is what I want to do in the next few minutes. Oh, by the way, this is my brother. The other, I don't know who he was just walking around. Yeah, just came and say, oh, okay, take a picture with you. Yeah, sure you can. Oops. Let me just go back. What I want to tell you is that even though entrepreneurship is difficult, when it's done well, it's a joy. And it's a joy because it brings a lot of wealth to the person, a lot of wealth to the organization, a lot of wealth to the community. And we need to understand what is the root cause of successful entrepreneurship. Not what we believe to be true, what it is really true. And for that, I want to connect two concepts, the concept of successful entrepreneurship and the concept of useful innovation. Now, useful innovation, for those of you who do not know that, is a concept that was developed in the late 90s by Bain & Company. Yeah, Bain & Company. And these guys, they were focusing on how organizations could actually innovate without losing money. And this is insane because if you understand the reason why people innovate is to make money, to have a competitive advantage, and in practice, innovation is a little bit like tossing money in a black hole. You just toss money into a black hole, nothing ever comes out of it. It's very, very painful, it's very laborious, but you never get any good results from putting money in innovation. That these guys were saying that we should be able to have useful innovation. Innovation that is not only good for the organization, but brings a significant competitive advantage. The question is, how? How do you do that? One of the things that they said is that useful innovation is obviously innovation that pays for itself. So it's not that innovation is free in the sense it doesn't cost anything. Of course, innovation is an investment. But at the end, when you measure how much you put in and how much you took out, the net result is positive. And that is a focus that Bain & Company had for a long, long time. I'm trying to see how to do that. So let me just give you an example and introduce you to the common example, the curious example of the common lettuce. Now, the lettuce is a very humble vegetable that is used to make salads, right? It's not very fancy as vegetables go. And the one that is most sold in my country, in Canada, looks like this. Let me see if I can get it. There we go. This is called an iceberg lettuce. Now, this lettuce has a lot of virtues, like a huge number of virtues, none of which have anything to do with the quality, the organoleptic qualities of the vegetable. So it doesn't taste very good. It doesn't smell very good. It's not like, the texture is not very nice, but it keeps for a long, long time. It will not rot easily. And it keeps on the shelf for very long weeks. So essentially, manufacturers love it. Oh, the last thing, it grows on water. So in Canada, it's very good because in Canada, there's essentially no ground for like most of the year. So if you want to grow lettuces in winter, you have to do it on water. So they just make it grow on water. You don't need any ground. But the point here is that lettuces are sold like this in Canada and everywhere around the world, pretty much like that. This is what it looks like. This is what you buy. You go to the supermarket, you buy a salad, and this is what it looks like. There has been a few innovations, few successful innovations in the history of the lettuce, but none of them are really, really very impactful. They're not that great. This is an innovation. Now, for those of you who are paying attention to this, take a look at these red things that you see there. These are elastic bands. Elastic bands. Now, why would you put elastic bands on a lettuce? Well, I don't know, because I haven't asked. I just took the picture, but I imagine that because when you move lettuce from one part to the other, the outer leaves, they get like smushed. And then, of course, if you keep losing leaves, that's lettuce that you can't sell. Now, if you buy one lettuce, it doesn't really matter. In fact, many of you, when they buy lettuce, they take the outer leaves to take all the pesticides out of the dirt. Typically, they just put that in the garbage. But if you're the producer and you make, 100 tons of lettuces, if every lettuce loses 2 or 3 leaves, you lose some money. My problem here is not the problem itself, it's the solution. The solution is worse than the problem. Now, to save 2 leaves per lettuce, now you have to have a person who's putting elastic bands on the lettuces. It means that you have to hire the person, and it's going to be more than one because it's a job that's like very monotonous, very boring. So you need to have more people, and now you have a problem. So you solve a problem, a little problem, and the solution costs you more than what you had in the first place. This is a situation that is a little bit like Christmas. I don't know how Christmas is for you, but Christmas for me is like I buy the gift I want, I give it to you. You buy the gift you want, you give it to me. And at the end of the day, we're worse off. Might as well I buy the gift for me, you buy the gift for you, and then we're all happy. So it's a situation in which you take some action, and at the end of the day, you're worse off. Bad innovation. There have been some other innovations in the lettuce world. I mean, there are 2 or 3 that you can see there. I'm going to point them out for you. The first one is, you can see on the lower left side of the screen. If you really look very hard, you'll see that there is something, a white substance there that some of you have identified as ice. Now, why would you put ice on the lettuce? Or rather say, why would you put the lettuce on ice? Well, for a long time, I thought that this was because, the lettuce keeps longer. Then I started teaching at MIT, especially in the Master in Supply Chain Management, and I told that to my students, and they looked at me and said, what? That's not why. These guys were logisticians. They said, what do you mean it's not that why? Well, the guy said, listen, if I do my job properly, a lettuce is never going to rot. So if the supermarket is doing her job properly, the quantity of lettuce that circulates never has enough time to rot on the shelves. So why would you put the ice? That costs money. So I went to my supermarket friends. And the supermarket friends said, no, that doesn't do any good. I mean, the ice, just like we put that to charge more for the lettuce. I say, what do you mean? Well, it turns out, long story short, that when you see a vegetable on ice, when you see a vegetable being treated nicely, people assume that it's higher quality, and as a consequence, higher value, and as a consequence, willing to pay more price. Now, I'm not saying this is wrong or right. I'm just saying this is the way it is. So very often supermarkets will take a cheap vegetable. They will do some special treatment so it looks nice to you. For example, in Spain, there are oranges, like lots of them. You can buy the cheap ones, or you can buy the expensive ones. They're not very different. But the expensive ones are wrapped in paper, each one. Now, the fact that wrapped on paper makes you believe that somehow the quality of the orange is better, and you pay more. Well, that's a great innovation. That is a profitable innovation. There's another innovation there. You see there the little faucets, the green faucets? The same. They're supposed to spray water on the lettuce. Now, in my naivete, I believe that the water on the faucets was there to make sure that the vegetables will not rot. I said, nah, it just doesn't do any good. The vegetables do not rot because they're sold before. So what is it there for? Oh, we just put it there to charge more money for the vegetables. So whenever you see someone spraying water on vegetables, you're willing to pay more for that. Now, I'm not saying this is a bad thing or a good thing, but those are profitable innovations. But you will notice that all these things do not benefit the guys who produce the lettuce. Now, the supermarket guys are making money because they're charging you more. They buy at the same price, but they charge you more because you believe the lettuce is super. But as far as supermarket goes, as far as the producer of lettuce goes, this is not a good deal. He's down. All the surplus, all the value is being captured by the supermarket. And when he tried to capture the value by putting elastic bands, he made it worse. But hey, what can you do? It's a lettuce. Right, what can you do? You're stuck. You produce lettuce. It's too bad for you. So went the world for many, many years, in fact, many centuries. In fact, this is the beginning of time. Until someone said, you know what? Maybe there's something else here. And this something else has to do with the way lettuces are being sold. Someone said, let's take a look at that. someone one day for the first time chopped the lettuce and put it in a bag. Now, if you want to analyze this from a technical perspective, what is it really? It's a plastic bag with a mixed lettuce and some inert gas. I don't know what they put in the argon now, probably like hydrogen or something anyways, nitrogen, something so it doesn't oxidize, because if you have oxygen, it will turn brown. But I'll bring your attention to the fact that this is about 5 times more expensive than the actual ingredients. So if you produce that and you put that into a bag next to your production, now your value added has been multiplied by 5. And now, of course, retrospectively, everything looks simple. Why is it that people love to buy this lettuce or this salad? Well, because it turns out that most customers, if you're like me, we don't buy a lettuce, we buy a salad. I buy lettuce because I want the salad. I don't want the lettuce, I want the salad. And I buy it to just make it. And it's very inconvenient because you have to chop, you have to wash it. This is very, very convenient. Now, when you start having more money, well, you know what, it doesn't really matter. It's 5 times more expensive, but it doesn't matter. My convenience is worth the amount of money I'm going to pay. And then you move on for that. My point here is someone, one day had the idea. In the 1990s, there was not a single bag of lettuce sold like that to consumers. I will tell you that this is the way that lettuce are being sold to professionals for the past at least 50 years. Imagine if you have a restaurant, you feed 200 people, you don't cut your lettuce, you just like buy in a bag, right? So there were huge bags of lettuces for supermarkets, for restaurants, but not for people. So essentially, it's a very low innovation. It's a low-level innovation, but it's innovation that produced significant results. By the year 2000, the market was $1 billion. By the year 2010, at the last time I checked, it was over $10 billion. Now, you will say, okay, but people moved away. People now are not buying lettuces, they're buying this. So essentially, it's cannibalization. It's about going from one category to the other. No, it's not. The sale of lettuces in the US has remained stable. I mean, essentially vegetative, growing with the population. This has been added on top. So it means that people are doing something, taking the money from somewhere and buying this instead of, I don't know what they're not buying. But they're buying this. Now, the bottom line is that if you can do this with lettuce, you can do it with anything. But the point is how? How do you understand that? How do you get to that particular point? And of course, this puts us in a very, very deep dilemma because we want to have competitive advantage, and that means doing things in a novel way, but we need to do things in a novel way that at the same time produces good results. So in the end, competitive advantage, it is a fight between being too early and being too late. Now, you're going to laugh at the next 2 pictures, and that's fine, but think about what I said before in a more serious way, in which that all knowledge, all advantage happens in a context. And what is really important is to understand not just the person, not just the idea in isolation, but the idea in the context. So, fight between being too early and being too late. This guy is a little bit too early. So for those who love first mover advantage, you know what? Take a look at this guy. First mover advantage. No, not really. This poor guy actually has first mover disadvantage. In fact, I really like, I don't really like because I feel sorry for this little guy, but I like this guy. This guy is telling you a lot about first mover advantage. And this guy, well, he's realizing a little bit too late that maybe he shouldn't have done that. So moving too early, when things are dangerous, is not a good idea. For all of you who are happy with with Facebook, you need to remember MySpace. There was someone before, and he was not there. He was a little bit too early. It wasn't bad. It was the wrong moment. He was not there when he was supposed to be there. And of course, you can be too late. And if you're too late, well, other nasty things happen. Yeah. I like it. I mean, friendly wolves. Yeah, that's being too late. So it's not just about the idea, it's about the combination of the idea and the moment. And the point is, how do you make sure that this is going to work? Unfortunately, you don't. You cannot be 100% sure. You can never be sure of things. But there are a few techniques, there are a few tools that will allow you to improve the quality of your thinking, the quality of your analysis, and make sure that any innovation moves forward as fast as it can with as little money as possible and stop when there's no more market for it. This is a technique we will develop in the next few days in the class. We're going to talk about how to do it, how to make sure you can unfold the innovation in the most profitable way. At the end of the day, what I'm saying here is that everything is about opportunity recognition. If you're not able to recognize opportunities, let me see if I can switch it. Oh, there we go. Opportunity recognition. It's all about that. And that is the first thing I want to discuss with you guys. The idea of opportunity recognition is the starting point for every entrepreneur, is the key, if you will, to be able to achieve results, and it's one of the most misunderstood moments of entrepreneurship. And especially, it's a misunderstood moment because it contrasts what we think is true with what it really is true. And I will be talking more about that and how to make sure that you actually start with a good opportunity instead of starting with a bad opportunity. What you will see, and this is the introduction to what's going to come later, is that I'm going to contrast one very important thing, that is the idea, the notion of opportunity, and I'm going to contrast that with the concept of idea. Ideas and opportunities are not the same thing. They're different. And in fact, the organization of your process, starting from one or the other, makes a huge difference in the outcome. One is much more successful than the other. The point, however, is not where you start. The point is how we can learn from other entrepreneurs. I just told you a few minutes ago that it was very difficult to learn from successful entrepreneurs. It's immensely difficult. Why is that? Well, because their situations are unique, because the context is different, because they were in different times, in different moments, with different access to resources. They were in a different universe. We cannot copy what they did. It just doesn't work. So how can we learn then? Is it hopeless? Is there nothing we can do with entrepreneurship? No, there's something else. You cannot learn. We should not learn from success because there's very little you can extrapolate from success. But it turns out that entrepreneurs make mistakes, and those mistakes, they are systematic. Success may be unique. Mistakes are not. In fact, if you take all the firms that were created last year in Europe, or in the US, or in the world, all the firms, you eliminate a few at the top and a few at the bottom just to make sure you have a normal population, and you study why these firms did not move forward, you will find that the root cause of all innovation and entrepreneurial failure is the same reason why banks have to close down. And that is not because they're not profitable. That's not because their idea is bad. That's not because their strategy is not good. It's simply because they run out of cash. For memory, remember in 2007, 2008, you were alive, you were managers, and you were starting your careers probably. The world was like, we were like a few hours away from not having enough money in the cash machines. For those who not remember how it was, it was a few hours away of not being able to use cash anymore. That bad it was. But when Bear Stearns went down, the day before it collapsed, it still had an A+ rating, a AAA rating. It was a profitable firm. The problem was not profitability. The problem was not the market position. The problem was simply that they ran out of cash. Well, that is the reason why entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial ideas do not go forward. They run out of cash. But you may ask me, okay, but why is it that entrepreneur runs out of cash? Oh, entrepreneurs run out of cash for 3 reasons. The first reason is that entrepreneurs are very optimistic people. They're nice. They're driven. They're energetic. They believe in themselves. As a consequence, they tend to overestimate the amount of income they're going to receive. So if you're doing an entrepreneurial project, chances are that your income is overstated. Any professional investor will tell you, any professor will tell you, because we've seen so many of those, but you do not know because you're doing it for the first time, and for you it's natural. So when an entrepreneur says he or she is being conservative, I read he or she is being optimistic. First, you overestimate your income. But it gets worse. Not only you overestimate your income, you also underestimate the cost. You underestimate the amount of time it's going to take for you to produce good results. So the cost is going to be much higher than it actually is. Underestimating the income, underestimating the cost. So overestimating the income, underestimating the cost, and of course, underestimating the amount of time it's going to take. So more money than you're actually going to have, less cost than you're actually going to have, and less time that you think they're actually going to have, and by the nature of things, you end up running out of cash. And when you run out of cash, two things happen. If the idea is really good, someone will come and give you money. They will finance your idea, of course. But they will take it away from you because, of course, the investors, they want something, and that something in return is the investment they have in the firm. If the idea is not good, no one's going to invest, and your firm is toast. The point then is that timing matters considerable for entrepreneurship, and that timing is essential for the success of any venture. But that implies also that with very simple techniques, you can learn to avoid the mistakes that other people made. Now think about it. Life is unpredictable. There's a lot of unpredictability in life. So what you want to do is to make sure to be prepared for accidents, for unpredictable events. But this is not unpredictable. If I can tell you that 99 out of 100 entrepreneurs underestimate the cost, and you go and you underestimate the cost, that was not a surprise, that was a mistake. If I tell you that 99 entrepreneurs out of 100 will overestimate the income, and you go and you overestimate your income, that's not an accident, that's a mistake. And that's a preventable mistake. The argument I'm making here is that we can learn a lot, not from the study of very successful or iconic entrepreneurs. We can learn a lot from understanding how entrepreneurship unfolds and what are the key determinants for success. And the key determinants for success, ladies and gentlemen, are not that difficult. They are very, very, very simple. They are finding a situation in which you can create value for a customer. The customer can be an old lady, can be a man, can be a woman, can be a firm, but you need to create value. That value needs to be created, otherwise there will not be any entrepreneurial activity. But creating value is not alone, it's not enough. You can create a lot of value that can be captured by the customer. The second thing is creating value and being able to capture the value. You keep the value within the firm. That is the second thing you need to do. The third thing you need to do, after having created value and capture value, is to have a good idea. The idea is a solution for the value creation. And how do you do that? Well, it's very simple. Instead of thinking of ideas, opportunities, think about problems and solutions. There is a customer out there. She has a problem. There's a customer out there. It has a problem. Can you solve the problem? Do you have any economic way to solve that particular problem with your customer? If the answer is yes, you can move to the next step. If the answer is no, you come back and select a new problem. When you actually start thinking in terms of problems to be solved and are asking about the value that these problems create and the value that your solution provides to these problems, you're putting entrepreneurship in a completely different perspective. You're putting it as something that you can analyze, that you can correct, and at the end of the day, you can propose to your clients in a better way. The idea is that at the end of this long journey, you're able to learn from the mistakes that other people make. And of course, by learning from other people's mistakes, you can make your journey much safer, and much more real. Now, I have focused on entrepreneurship exclusively, but I'm going to be focusing also on innovation. The idea of innovation is that doing things that are novel to the firm. The idea of novelty is also an idea that is very powerful because it's led by managers, but it also allows the organization to provide with better, more sustainable competitive advantage. The question at the end of the day, ladies and gents, is how do we do this? What are the tools that we have to do this? What are the instruments we have to do this? How can we actually move that? And what I want to tell you is that in some cases, it's just a matter of perspective. Now, perspective is very important. Perspective is the way we have to see the world. Perspective is the way we have to approach problems. But sometimes we need to have a new perspective because that way we can see things with a different light. And when we see things with a different light, we learn things that were there but we could not see. We are trapped, ladies and gentlemen, by our own way of seeing things. For example, we're trapped by the way of believing that what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur is a great idea. Most entrepreneurs do not have a great idea. They just work hard and develop an idea. They don't have it, they just develop it. Most successful entrepreneurs, they look for the opportunity. They don't look for the idea. And then they create an idea to serve the opportunity. Most entrepreneurs, they actually try to learn with very few steps that cost very little money, but they will make you learn a lot, as opposed to investing lots of money in very uncertain things. And these few steps, they actually give you information, they give you understanding, and they allow you to take the next step in a better way. But at the end, it's a matter of perspective. Very often we are trapped by the way we see the world, like this poor little pooch is trapped by a jail of what, beer cans? And he doesn't see, he or she I guess, doesn't see that the prison is in his mind. But of course it's a dog. You say, well, it's a dog. Of course the dog doesn't understand. I would not do that because I'm a human. I'm a person. I'm like a very, very reasonable person. I would never be trapped into these things. Of course I wouldn't. But even dogs can learn, see? And they can learn things that we're not really meant to do. Because I don't know what dogs were meant to do when they were brought to this earth. But I'm pretty sure that doing that, there was no other things that was in the plans. And the guy's doing it. And it's like being a human on top of that, with that. The thing is that it's not because the dogs are doing these things that we can't do it. But it's very easy to see things from a wrong perspective. It's very easy to get fooled by what we believe to be true. That's why we need to go back to evidence-based entrepreneurship. Let me give you the last one, so see if you can see how easy it is to be fooled by your own eyes, how easy it is to believe something that is not the way you think it is. Wow, the bolts are going up. What kind of magic is that? It's not magic, it's called forced perspective. It's a construction taken from a right angle, and your eyes are fooling you into believing this goes up. In fact, it doesn't go up, it's going down. It's always the same, but your eyes are fooling you. So this is what I'm trying to do with you guys. Not today, because it's going to take a few moments, but this is what we'll do in this class. We'll try to see your things from a different perspective. And the different perspective is the perspective of evidence. Evidence-based entrepreneurship. We're going to take what science believes to be true. I'm going to tell it to you. You're going to contrast that with your experience. We're going to see how this can be applied to reality. And I'm going to tell. Now, maybe in a few years, what we believe to be true today is going to be proven wrong. Yeah, that's what science is. But at least we believe to be true today. We're not going to be basing entrepreneurship in illusions, in desires, in good wishes, or in platitudes. We're going to be basing entrepreneurship on the reality of the content. Things that entrepreneurs do that lead into success, but also, and especially things that entrepreneurs do that lead into failure, how these things, they happen constantly among entrepreneurs, and why those entrepreneurs, in fact, are something we can learn from. Not necessarily from the huge success, but also from the failures, the issues they have, and especially how they corrected them. For those who are still convinced that Steve Jobs was one of the best entrepreneurs in history and one of the best innovators in history, I suggest you go to Google and you take type Apple failures, and go to Google Images, Apple failures, and you get a long list of products that Apple launched that were huge failures. Now, of course, we remember the ones that were successes, but not the failures. That doesn't take anything away from Apple, which is a great company, and Steve Jobs, who was an amazing manager. But even Steve Jobs, he was used to the fact that sometimes he was going to launch things that were going to fail. And he accepted it. Now, he didn't take it personally. He said, okay, well, I'm not a genius. I'm not God. I launch one, it's going to work. The next one is not going to work. Fine. Then I'll just minimize the damage, and I'll go to the next one. Now, if this is the case of Steve Jobs, who was clearly one of the super innovators of the 20th century, imagine what is the case of us. Trying a little, learning a little, essentially very simple work that we need to do. Very simple work that we can learn. Because to conclude, I'm going to take 5 more minutes to conclude this presentation. You can tell me, well, can I learn all this? Can it be taught in a classroom? Is it something that can be learned, can be taught? And the answer is, well, depends what you mean by learning, right? But I don't really understand the question. It's not a good question. Now, imagine that I'm talking about music, and you tell me, can I learn to sing like Pavarotti? Say, well, no, probably you can't sing like Pavarotti, because Pavarotti was really special. He had super voice. He was blessed by the angels, right? He has a voice it was fantastic. Now, he cannot be reproduced. But the true question is not, can you be like Pavarotti? Can you sing like Pavarotti? The true question is, can you be much better than what you are today? And that question, of course, has an answer. Yes, of course, you can be much better than what you are today. Now, you may never be able to be like Steve Jobs, but you can be one hell of a lot better than what you are today. And you can do that by understanding the principles of entrepreneurship, applying it to your reality and the context in which you want to create a business on. It's very simple. Because entrepreneurship, just like management, is something super powerful. But it's not something mysterious, esoteric. Entrepreneurship is not a science. We don't have laws in entrepreneurship. We don't have rules. Everything is context dependent. So there are no laws like science. So if you come from a hard sciences, from engineering, or from biology, or from any hard science, you will be a little bit disappointed because there are no hard rules. They're like rules of thumb. There are no laws. So entrepreneurship is not a science. Entrepreneurship is not an art. Some people tell you it's an art or it's a passion. No, it's not about art or passion. I mean, of course, it involves art and passion. It involves creation and passion, but it's not about creation. You don't become an entrepreneur to create something. You become an entrepreneur because you want to solve a problem, make money, create a firm. So it's not about artistic impulses or creation. So if entrepreneurship is not an art and it's not a science, what is it? It is a practice. It's like management. It is a practice. It's something we do. And because it is something we do, we can learn to do it better. Now, oddly enough, as with any practice, practice makes you better. And that is what we're going to be focusing on, the practice of entrepreneurship. How do I learn to take all the lessons, which are not that many and not that complicated, how do I learn to take these lessons and apply them to my own reality? Because it turns out that when we go back to life, to real life, to the managerial life, we forget how context-dependent things are, and we try to make it much more scientific than they really are. And of course, we make a few mistakes with that. My argument today for the rest of the day, and we're going to carry on, is that this is a practice. Entrepreneurship is a practice. As a practice, you can learn the basics, and then practicing will make you much, much better. And that exercise of translating your practice, what you learn, into your reality is what definitely is going to make you an edge. In concluding, I just want to say that you're taking an MBA, you're taking a master's degree, you're pursuing your advanced education. I congratulate you for that. It's a very good decision. But you need to know that some of the things you learn here, they're going to be obsolete very soon. Some of the tools that you learn, some of the techniques, they're going to be gone. In 5, 6, 7 years, 10 years, there's going to be something else that's going to come. And that's good because it means that we progress. There's something that's not going to change, and that is the attitude. So developing the entrepreneurial attitude, the capacity to judge a situation as an entrepreneur, as an innovator, make decisions that are based on that entrepreneurship, and incorporating what we know from other entrepreneurs into your thinking so you make better decisions, that is going to last for the rest of your life. That will stay with you forever. The entrepreneurial attitude doesn't change. The innovation attitude doesn't change. So that's why we insist so much on the practice. I'm going to insist so much that you keep talking about the practice. You practice this in the class, you practice this outside of the class, you practice this in the exercises you do, but you actually translate all the lessons that science provides us about entrepreneurship into your own practice, so you can make these connections and you can improve the quality of what you're doing, the quality of your outcomes, the quality of the consequence of your decisions. I can guarantee you it's open to everybody. Anyone can do it, but you need to practice. So that's pretty much all I had to say for the day. Thank you very much for being here, you, the ones who are far away in different parts of the world. Thank you very much, you guys, for being here. I mean, I have some time with most of you for a while.